noises.
All right, here we are. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Principal Tech Product. This is a podcast where we exclusively invite guests like Paul, who've disrupted their industry by bringing a tech product to market. Generally, a tech product which has either created like a seven-figure revenue stream, on the journey to that. Personally, why we do this is, I'm a strong believer that in the Northeast we need more people like Paul building tech products and turning traditional industries into like creating a tech focus in those industries to disrupt those industries. And I think we need more of those businesses in the Northeast because it just helps our economy, and what helps the economy helps the people. And we need more skill in businesses doing that in the Northeast and bringing tech to market. Today we've got Paul King, co-founder of Flowmobile. You co-founded that alongside your brother David, right? And yeah, Flowmobile just makes it easier for asbestos surveyors to write reports, saving them time and money so they can focus on what matters. Paul.
You've done your
Hello.
research, Mark. Yeah, brilliant. Thanks so much for nailing the strapline. Hi, Mark. Thanks so much for inviting me today on the podcast. I'm really excited to talk about tech, Northeast, whatever you want to talk about today.
Yeah, sure. I mean, let's just jump in then. Like how did you start your journey?
So that's an interesting one. I'd probably start by saying this isn't our first rodeo. When I say our, I'm referring to myself and my brother. So we started our first business in our 20s. We were just young whippersnappers back then, and we didn't have a lot of life experience, I suppose. But my brother's always had a gift for programming. So he learned to code at the age of 13. Picked up programming books from my father's floor and kind of taught himself. And I would say he's unparalleled really in terms of his ability. So we decided we wanted to start a business in our 20s. However you look at that, it was either an enormous success or an enormous failure, depending on how you look at it. So we had sort of 40,000 users, but we struggled to monetize it. And we did monetize it to an extent. Anyway, long story short, David decided he wanted to go off and do other things, and we actually fell out over that business, unfortunately, for a wee while, which is water under the bridge now. But fast forward 10, 15 years, I was working in a sort of pretty normal job, sort of tech support role. I'd completely left the business world behind, and my brother sort of got in touch. Actually, it was slightly after that. I was learning to code myself. I was working for my dad. He's a web developer, so I was learning to code. I was really enjoying it. My brother got in touch and he said, "You know what? I want to give it another go with the business. I want to try something different." So I was getting itchy feet, to be honest with you, Mark, and I was sort of thinking, I'm not cut out for working for somebody else. This isn't me. And I decided, you know what, this is a great time. And so we thought about what business problems we could solve. My brother had previously worked as the software architect for a local company. They're called Lucian Environmental, and he built some software that essentially managed their entire business. But it was largely around report generation. So, how you collect data on site as an asbestos surveyor, and then how you create reports off the back of it. For an asbestos surveyor, the report is the product. That's kind of essentially what they're selling. And that company went from, I think, 30 staff to around 300. They grew enormously, and they ended up becoming the UK's biggest in their industry. So, in fact, maybe even Europe, I think. So when David left that company, he'd went to work in Silicon Valley, or for a Silicon Valley-based company. Again, he's still kind of mulling over some of these ideas and the problems that he hadn't solved at Lucian. So when he got in touch with me, it was kind of like, look, I've worked in this company now for a while. I want to sort of tackle some of these problems again, and then, I've got a good idea of those problems and what we should start with. So one of the problems was vehicle route planning. Now, vehicle route planning is one of the NP hard problems. I don't know if you know sort of maths NP hard problems. It's extremely hard problem to solve. And how do you manage a fleet of vehicles who are going and they're being sent to jobs around the UK essentially. So what David thought was, we can build something like that. We can build something to solve that problem. We did. It was a nice bit of software. Unfortunately, we had zero credibility in that industry. So we couldn't get any clients. We realized, you know what, this is going to tank. We're not going to make it with this business. So we quickly pivoted into a different idea, which was actually the asbestos surveying software itself. Similar to what David had built at his previous company. But that didn't just come out of nowhere. We actually had a couple of people reach out to us and say, you know what, can you build us this like asbestos reporting software? And then another company said, can you build us this fire risk assessment software? We realized those two questions were exactly the same. It's the same bit of software, just different templates, I suppose you call them,
Sure.
for different industries. So we thought, you know what, there's an opportunity here to bring what David had built for Lucian to the wider market, and immediately got traction. We just found that, you know, the credibility David already had just catapulted us into this industry, and there was a strong market draw as well. People really wanted something different. So
Yeah.
there were two entrenched competitors. We were kind of new kids on the block essentially, and people liked that we were different. We were doing something different, and we'd also we'd had some different 10x features that they didn't have. So we solved some of the harder problems from Lucian from the beginning.
Right.
So things like
Okay.
real-time data sync and offline mode were two of the sort of big gnarly problems that we sort of solved from the onset, and those were things that people really wanted.
Nice. So I mean that probably leads us quite nicely into our next question. Then, you know, was that like a pivotal moment or a breakthrough for your product development, or would you attribute sort of like a breakthrough to other things as well?
Um, yeah, I've got a bunch to say on that topic. I would just start by saying that the pivotal moment for us was actually probably partnering up from the very beginning.
Right.
So I think one of the problems that people have when they start a business is you can't go 100% without a co-founder. If you have responsibilities at home, if you've got to pay a mortgage, if you've got a family to support,
Sure.
and if you can't go 100%, I think you're destined for failure. So I think Dharmesh from HubSpot says that, you know, if you didn't give it 100% and it didn't work out, you'll never know if it was the product or if it was your commitment.
Mm.
So the first major sort of decision I suppose you make in a startup is like, how much focus and commitment am I going to give this?
Yeah.
And if you've got a co-founder, well, you one of you can give it 100%, the other one can freelance, which is what we did. So I use
Mm.
my newfound coding skills to bring in some capital for the business, while
Okay.
David, who's a much better coder than me, he focused on the actual product and building the product. So
Yeah.
one of us could give 100%. One of us was just a supporting role, which was me.
That's a really
Um,
interesting way to do it.
yeah, if you look at it in aggregate, one of you still giving it 100%, you know, and that's the thing
Yeah.
that counts.
Yeah.
And the other one can feedback obviously with ideas, and you can give maybe 40-50%, something like that.
Yeah.
But that was probably one of the sort of pivotal moments. And as strange as it sounds, actually COVID was the best thing that happened to our company. So our surveyors are extremely busy people.
Mm.
Our clients rather, you know, asbestos surveyors, and it's really hard to pin them down to a sales and marketing call. You know, how do you get them
Yeah.
on a call to give them a demo? It's really difficult generally, I would say. So when people were in the lockdown, these people were suddenly contactable. We could get them
Right.
down, get them in front of a Zoom call, get them on a demo, and
Yeah.
they had time. They had time to kill.
Yeah.
So for us, that was amazing. We could actually validate some of those 10x features I was just talking about earlier on these calls, which for a startup like ours was gold dust. You know, am I going in the right direction? Are these the right features people want? You speak to
Yeah.
enough
Yeah.
people, you can suddenly start validating those ideas.
Yeah. And am I right in thinking as well that you and David sort of split your focus in two different directions? You know, because my observation is David's very focused on building like a really like insanely good product, and you're very focused on making sure the world knows that you've got an insanely good product. Like, is am I right in thinking that's a split you have?
Yeah, exactly, Mark. I think you've got to sort of look at where your skills lie. You know, I could have coded this product. Like it would have taken me 100 years. You know, David can do it in 6 months. You know,
Yeah.
but that's the difference. And you've got to sort of think, well, if I take my ego out of this equation, you know, I love building stuff. I love making software. It's great, but I know I'll never be as good as David, never in a million years. So,
Yeah.
from that point of view, actually, my focus was best served in the business and like sales, marketing, finance. There has to be somebody who does all of the little jobs. And it was an old mentor of ours, Paul Smith, who said that there has to be that person who picks up those tasks and those jobs. And I always thought, well, that could be me. So
Mhm.
I've started to delegate some of those away now, and sort of start going into some of the stuff I enjoy more. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's a lot of hats for that person. Whoever takes that role on has to be prepared to switch hats every every hour sometimes, I guess. The other person can just focus on the product development, which is, it's a bit more, well, you're going to get a lot more productivity if one person is just focusing on that. As you know, as a coder, you don't need distractions. You don't want to be thinking about multiple things at the same time. Thinking
Yeah,
about the product is sort of the key focus, really.
they're very different mindsets as well, right? One is I'm solving a hard problem here. Basically like, the hardest Sudoku problem you have, like, is I'm solving that like every few hours, versus, like the empathetic nature of sales. I think they're very different things, where it's about connecting with people, understanding their problems, and understanding how you can pitch your product as a way to solve those problems. I think they're completely different mindsets, and it's hard to just flip from one to the other. But I think it's easier to just be in one of those states all of the time.
Precisely, yeah. Context switching is a real problem as a coder. I remember when I was a coder, we had this imaginary thing. We called it a shambat, and if someone placed the shambat on your desk, you knew they wanted to talk to you. You could see the shambat in the corner of your eye.
Yeah.
It could be anything. It could be anything. We just picked whatever, and you didn't have to break your concentration, but you knew, when I get the next break in my thinking, I can stop and I can chat, and that was always sort of a good approach for us. We just put our headphones on, if your headphones are on, you're not to be disturbed, kind of thing. But I think the key thing for a programmer is you don't want to be too removed from the problem and the audience. So David was always involved in the sales calls all the time from the very beginning, learning about the customer's problems. I was feeding them back to us, and we decided very early on we're going to have a public roadmap where our clients could actually vote on the features that they want to see within the product, and that then helps you prioritize what you build next. So yeah, in terms of pivotal moments and breakthroughs you mentioned, I would say having a co-founder from the beginning to go kind of 100%, or at least one of you can go 100% all in. And also, we were just very fortunate with the timing with the COVID. So that's not going to be the same for everyone, of course. But yeah, certainly from our point of view, timing was everything, really.
Yeah, nice. And I guess on the inverse of that, what's the single biggest problem you've had, and how did you overcome that?
That's an interesting mark. One mark, I would say personally. I'll split it into personally and business.
Sure.
I think they're two separate things. So from a personal point of view, as you know, Ashley, my wife, and I have had a daughter. So she's 9 months old. So, sorry, 10 months old now. And one of the challenging parts about that was that Ashley also has a business. So she's a business owner. She has a podcast studio in Newcastle. Now, I know little to nothing about podcasting. Really, it's more kind of just from absorbing some of the stuff I hear Ash say, I guess. But because Ash's business was in its infancy, sort of during the start of her maternity leave, but she wasn't quite profitable, that meant that my focus was then split between my business and her business. And because she didn't have a large enough team, I was actually had to be hands-on doing the work. So I was coming into the studio. I taught myself how to podcast, a bit of a crash course, and I realized that actually my skills in helping her business to grow were in the same skills that I bring to my business. So pricing, sales, marketing, finance, and perhaps some of those areas where Ashley isn't as strong. So what I ended up doing was I immediately saw that she was spending quite a lot of money on freelancers, and decided, that's not really sustainable to carry on in that way with this sort of business model. So especially when she wasn't herself in the business and able to bring in revenue. So what I did from the beginning is I sort of hired to fix that problem, get the freelancers down to the minimum, and also then ultimately hire myself out of Ashley's business. So it was like anything I was doing, I realized, that's top priority. I shouldn't be spending my focus here. I need to be spending my focus on my business. So that was a challenging time. I was fortunate to get a brilliant production manager, Samantha, who came in and basically solved all those problems overnight. She's absolutely amazing.
Nice.
So very, very lucky. I can't say that we interviewed a lot of people. She just happened to be one of the first people we sort of spoke to. So that was fantastic. Yeah, but what I ended up doing there, Mark, was I treated her business like my business, and she came back to a business that she probably didn't even recognize. So I solved problems she probably didn't even know she had, and hopefully she's happy. I'm not sure. The business has grown since, so I guess things are going well. From a business point of view, I would say that the problems we've had are problems with our very first clients. So one of the problems you have when you scale is certainly from a support point of view is you can't give the same attention and focus to your clients that you used to be able to do.
Yeah.
So our first half a dozen clients had the white glove, ultimate service where we would be coding into the night, fixing their specific problems. We
Yeah.
would be on the on phone calls all the time, just checking in and all this kind of stuff. We would build reports that were just bang on exactly what they needed.
Yeah.
And one of the problems as you grow is you can't then, it's a non-obvious problem, but you can't then sustain that level of service for the well, now 260 clients we've got. They're never going to get that same amount of attention, especially from the
Yeah.
co-founders. They've got attention from our customer success manager and our customer support team,
Yeah.
but it's unlikely they'll be dealing with David and I directly, and we'd be coding their specific issues. So that's one problem. The sort of support, keeping that same support function as you grow is challenging. And then also that comes with another problem as well, where those very first clients start to get a bit emotional about things. So
Mm.
here's a good example. Our very first clients, they were there when we were building our very first report templates. So
Yeah.
they feel now that they own those templates in a sense. They were the first to use them, but they essentially they feel some ownership of that. So now as we've grown and we're offering similar templates to other companies, we have conversations with some of those first clients where they get very emotional about it, and they say that, why are all these companies using my template? Like, no, you were just the first to use
Right.
it. And it's a hard problem to broach. It's a very emotional problem, which we've sort of struggled with fairly recently. And also, the feature requests that they ask for, they're going to be somewhere in the queue. They're not going to be top of the queue anymore. So uh, they feel like, it's like the Virgin broadband thing. How come all the new customers get the best service and the best deals? It's like it's a similar problem that we have in our company as well.
Sure. And it's interesting because I think all businesses which scale have a similar problem in that respect, in that the founders typically have good connections with their customers, but you start to get a bit, you spread thinner and thinner, right, the more customers you bring in. But that sounds like it's exponentially more difficult as a SaaS business, in that a service business might only have 10 to 20, 30 customers, for example. A small SaaS business has hundreds of customers, which is the position that you're in, and you're going to get to a position where you have thousands, etc., etc. So at what points do you identify that this is an issue and you think, okay, hang on, there's something here we have to fix, right? Like, do you have advice for people who are sort of on that journey, like about where they should start to take intervention?
It's a really good question, Mark. Yeah, I think, well, certainly going back to your last sort of example there about a service business versus a SaaS business, you see that, don't you? In a big SaaS company, they don't share their telephone number. It's hard to get in touch with somebody. They've got
Yeah.
chatbots and
Yeah.
all that sort of stuff. Everything becomes a lot less personal, and I don't know about you, but I really hate that. And I always look for a company where you can pick up the phone and give someone a call.
Mm.
Now, one of the things I would say is, like, even with 250, 60 clients, I would say every single one of those clients has my mobile telephone number. That's
Yeah.
not probably a very scalable thing to do, but it keeps your finger on the pulse as a founder.
Yeah. Yeah.
There'll be a point where I stop giving out my telephone number. That's crazy. Why am I doing that? But um, yeah, I would say then the issue becomes, uh, and as to your question about advice I would give is, you need to start thinking about how you scale your support team well, and how much support a support member of staff can realistically give. So, for example, we were just chatting about this the other day. We've got creeping up to 300 clients.
Yeah.
It's too much for one support staff. It's not enough for two full time.
I
As
see.
in, one person would be twiddling their thumbs part of the day. However, when you're onboarding new clients, the support function ramps up. People need onboarding, they need template development, all this kind of stuff. Certainly in our business,
Yeah.
there's an extra support demand. Now, no one wants to grow into pain. So if I suddenly turned on the sales and marketing machine tomorrow and 100 clients came out of the blue, we would struggle to onboard them. That's the truth. We would really struggle there. David and I would probably be back on support, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
So how do you do that? How do you scale at a sort of decent pace while not making your support staff cry in their pillows every night? So that has to be a bit of a chicken and egg situation. You need the support staff to support the new clients. You need the support new clients to justify the support staff, right, and to give them something to do. So what we've sort of looked at is, well, we think that one person could realistically support between 100 and 150 members of clients, rather. So they can support 150 clients, let's say. After that point, we should be starting to look for another support hire. Otherwise the support is going to drop. The service that people get is going to suddenly drop off a cliff, and we don't want that. So I think having some sort of metric where you kind of aligning yourself to that metric and saying, right, we're not going to let it go past there without hiring somebody else. I think that's the trick.
Okay, that's interesting. Excuse me. Okay, we'll edit that out post. Okay, so I guess it would be amiss of us to talk about this and not automation and self-service and support.
Yeah.
So is there an element there that you've sort of looked at or capitalized on alongside human support?
Automation's an interesting one, isn't it? So I think certainly from the founder's point of view, a lot of founders like myself and my brother, we're technical people. We maybe like to sort of code things to solve all of those every problem. Can you create automation to give people the support information that they need? But I think you can go too far with that. So if you try to automate everything, if you try to use chatbots to answer questions and things like that, suddenly, like I was saying before, the support becomes less personal. Then suddenly we might have lost our edge in a sense, because as the incumbent into a new market, who probably over time have experienced the same problem as us, their support's got steadily worse. I'm not saying that for sure, but I would expect they're having similar issues. And people have less personal service. Well, should you be in a hurry to ditch that level of support that got you those customers in the first place? I suppose those early adopters, they came to you because they had this white glove treatment. They had, they had the founders personally answering their problems and things like that. So I think you can automate certain things, and we have for sure. Like we've automated various things around, like we work with a network of freelancers, for example, where they do our cover page designs. Now that's third party, so rather than kind of going backwards and forwards with emails, it's if someone signs up to our service, they'll get an introduction seemingly from me, but actually just from the automation gods. It just looks like me, and it's sort of making that introduction for me, and it's also it still sounds personal. I'll follow up with any queries, of course, but it's saving me a lot of work. And then it'll go into that freelancer's work queue. They can deal with it quickly. So all of those things we've automated, but there are some things which I'm sort of pretty reluctant to automate in terms of certainly the customer facing side of things.
I think that's fair. I've got an example of this which is fresh in my mind from the CRM we use. So there's some bug in there, which means that I can't do what I need to do. And as a developer, I can see that's a bug, right? But trying to convey that through chats is quite frustrating when all I'm getting is a chat bot. And what makes it a frustrating experience actually is like 99% of the time the product just works very well, and it's like the one time it doesn't work, you really struggle to get through to someone who can actually fix that for you. So I can see your reluctance there to try and push customers down that frustrating path.
Absolutely, yeah. And my advice to anyone is always have a telephone number on your website. People in my industry are in such a hurry to try and take themselves out of the equation. I find that they don't think about when they're on the other side of the sort of foot, like yourself, the other side of the equation, like yourself. So in those cases, you get pretty frustrated if you've got a problem that needs solving now and someone's not available to solve it. It's an interesting one. I think it also forms part of the culture of the business as well. Would you rather be on a chat answering a message, or would you rather be on the phone? I mean, I know personally I'd rather be chatting to somebody, building relationships. Maybe that's the sales and marketer and sort of sales and marketing person in me, but I don't know. But I think that's the old school way is actually the best way. Yeah.
Yeah, and you've mentioned just in your responses there, Paul, like um, a couple of times about the industry. So how do you see this product influencing the industry as it stands?
Yeah, so it's a good one. I think building a community, I would say, is probably one of the number one ones. So if you can imagine, all of our clients are competitors. Ultimately,
Sure.
they're going for the same work. They are, um, you know, sometimes trying to beat each other down on price, or yeah. Well, there's lots of sort of the competitive nature of business comes into it, of course. I mean, I've even seen sort of examples of on LinkedIn or somewhere like that where people will disparage other people's work. Oh, that's not the way you do it, and
Yeah.
it's a bit of a cutthroat industry, to be honest. Now, I think there's a huge opportunity here for small companies, the underdogs essentially, and our clients are predominantly small, sort of on the smaller end of the market, to team up and to, um, maybe go for work as a sort of team, or yeah, just help each other with actually getting ahead versus the big companies. So
Yeah.
we think there's an opportunity there. We've got a bit of a secret product in mind, a secret feature we're going to sort of implement at some point to kind of build that community. But we think there's an opportunity to sort of in aggregate help those small companies succeed against the big boys. One part of that, of course, is that we think with our software, those small companies have the ability to sort of compete better on price based on their
Yeah.
profit margins, the systems they're using. Of course, we think our software gives them a competitive advantage versus some of the big companies that are tied into maybe some old antiquated software, or they've built their own. Don't get me started on that. Some companies don't realize what a challenge that is unless you have someone like David, who's come in like Captain Jack Sparrow with his dreadlocks, as he looked like at the time, and is keen to solve those problems. You're going to spend hundreds of thousands of pounds on that. So those are the sort of the divides in the industry. You've got the small companies, maybe someone in between, and then those large companies that dominate a lot of the housing contracts and things like that. So I think we can come in at the smaller end to foster a community and to help those underdogs to win. Essentially, we are an underdog ourselves, so we want
Yeah.
underdogs to succeed.
Yeah, and I think I guess there's some depth to this as well, right? In terms of the impact that good asbestos management and reporting has in general, because we're talking about this in in an abstract way, but when we really sort of like peel back those layers, like asbestos in the UK kills about 5,000 people a year, right? So I guess the more surveyors there are, like doing like great work, having great reporting, should help that trend in the right direction, I would imagine as well.
Absolutely, and that's actually something I'm particularly proud of, Mark. So we think that it's kind of going back to what I said before about we've built these report templates from scratch to follow the standard, to actually, in a sense, it's pushing up, I would say, the standard in the industry. So instead of just creating reports any which way, you can use our software to do it in the right way, and to make it clear to users. I say users, I'm such a software guy, to the layman, that there's an issue in this property and this is what it is. So a lot of
Yeah.
surveyors tend to bring their ego into things, I find. So they'll write reports for other surveyors, but they don't write reports for the person who's actually going to be reading the report. It's the contractor, the person who's going to be knocking down a wall. They're the
Yeah.
person who's putting their health at risk, um, if they don't understand the report. So I think that something I'm very proud of, like I say, is actually that I think that we've pushed up the general standard of reports in the industry. I mean, maybe some people do better than us. That's fine, but I think if you looked at it as a whole, on average, yeah, we've done that, and I think that's something to be. Yeah, it makes me feel nice.
Yeah, and I think that's important as well, like recognizing like the overall positive impact that's being has here, because I think that really is important. Um,
And you know
It's
plenty about this yourself, Mark. You built the UK National Asbestos Register. You're sort of part of it, I know. So I know you must have been
yeah,
learning all about it.
yeah, we did. Referred from you guys, so thank you for that. So UKNER, headed up by a guy called Andrew Payton, and their mission is really to reduce the number of deaths in the industry by making asbestos reports and registers like readily available, and like that information to be democratized. So I guess the reports that are generated through your platform, making those really accessible, so that a contractor doesn't come into a building just accidentally play roulette, right? Am I safe to drill into this bit of wall?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. That's what it comes down to. And it's a
yeah,
great mission those guys have. Yeah, absolutely spot on. I'm
yeah.
glad you're working with them.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for the plug. Um, um, all right. So, I mean, you just hit a million revenue, right? Which is class. Like,
Thank you so much.
a really generic question here, but like, what's your approach been here?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think, well, to give you some idea of kind of where we started, we created a bit of software that we knew could be used for any industry. I guess that's what
Yeah,
you'd say. So we knew you could adapt it for fire risk assessments, for asbestos surveys, you name it. The compliance industry is huge. So in terms of our revenue generation approach, what we actually did in the very beginning is we created landing pages for services that we could service. So
yeah,
maybe a little bit misleading in a sense that we hadn't created those templates yet. However, we put the feelers out. So we realized, what, if anyone bites on any of these things, we'll build that template. It might be a rough couple of nights or a rough week of like all nighters
yeah,
or whatever, but we can do that. So we created landing pages for Legionella, fire risk assessments, asbestos surveys, you name it,
yeah,
and we sort of waited and see who came. And in the beginning, that's great because the opportunity then just presents itself. If your product's adaptable, you just go where the market tells you to go. So uh,
nice.
the obvious one to start with was asbestos. We put that landing page up. We got way more inquiries. The reason being that it's actually the second most regulated industry in the UK behind
Yeah,
nuclear, um, and also we had the credibility there. So it was a no-brainer to start there. We kept those landing pages up to see what else sort of started to stick, and then we sort of worked our way through that list of like inquiry. If we were getting a lot of inquiries for one, that was the next template, and just worked our way down.
right.
But then we actually did almost the opposite of that. So we took down all our landing pages apart from the one that we want to focus on. So that might sound a bit weird, but there's a real danger of muddying your marketing message, I find. So you can't be all things to all people. You're not going to get traction that way. You should go deep, then you should go wide, and
Yeah,
that's certainly what I believe. So we decided to go deep on the asbestos surveying market, and then we'd go wide. Sometimes sometimes it was a stealth thing. We still do. We offer services that we don't advertise anywhere.
right.
So there are certain key people in industries that we've met who use our software, and not a lot of other people know about it, but they're like, great, this is solving my problem, this is fantastic. But we
Yeah,
don't go out of our way to advertise that, because essentially we want anyone looking at our website to think this product is exactly for me. I'm an asbestos surveyor.
yeah,
I've got this problem. um, these guys are solving this exact problem, rather than going on the website and going, do these guys solve my problem? They do all this other stuff. Am I just a cog in a wheel?
mm,
We don't want to come across in that way. So we've made that decision purposefully to narrow down our marketing. And then the other thing we've then done is to, and I sort of alluded to it a little bit there, is once we've got a foothold in a particular market, we've looked for specialists in other markets to partner up with. Um,
yeah,
we are software developers. We are not industry experts. We have to
mm,
acknowledge that. So what we do is we find the person. There's usually one or two people in any industry who are the top of their field, who are the people who everyone goes to for advice. We find
yeah,
that person. We partner up with them. They help us build the template, and then their network and their they often do training and things like that. Then becomes an invaluable asset. And then it's like, how do you then incentivize your partners? So that's been the other side of it. Partners account for around about a sixth of our revenue, I'd say,
okay,
and the rest is from either the website or LinkedIn, we get about 50-50. I know that the next step in our go-to-market machine will actually be more inbound. So I'm creating a lead magnet, doing regular go-to-market activities to get people to that lead magnet, getting them on a mailing list, and then drip feeding. Because at any one point in time, there's only, maybe 10-20% of people who are actually ready and willing to buy. And we know that. So we need to be in front of them when they're ready to buy. So I know that's the next step, but what got us here isn't that. It's more stuff that doesn't scale, just getting in front of people, not being shy.
There are so many valuable points in there that I'm struggling to remember them all. So I just want to recap this, right? Because I think it's really valuable. So I think what you did first was like that sort of like wait list approach. You need testing the market before you build the product, right? And I think that's so important, because I think the natural inclination for people who've never built software before is to do that backwards. They scope out this amazing product in their head, they build it, then they take it to market, and then that's when they learn that they've made fundamental mistakes in what it is that they've built, or they've priced it wrong. There's something about that that's not going to work. Whereas
it's a common problem. Yeah, that's the problem that has been sort of almost enshrined in law, isn't it, Mark? People build things before there's an audience. You've got to get the audience first, and then you build it.
Exactly. And like, you don't need many people to validate the idea either. If you get something out there and you can get, you can decide, okay, well, if this many people sign up for this and say they're interested, then that's enough. Like, working backwards from my numbers, if half of them bought it, that's enough for me to build this product, because I can see that actually we're going to have a return on investment on that, on building that product. And I think there's something, anyway, that's the approach you took, right? Like, in a roundabout way, by the sounds of it.
And you've hit on the sort of key marker for success. I think their mark is that I've essentially run 3 businesses now, I suppose. So the first one in my 20s, immediately we realized there was a market need, and when you truly have a market need and there's a product market fit, the market pulls you, not the other way around. You're not just shouting into the void. So that one immediately, we realized we had a hit the nail on the head with the market. The second one, the vehicle route planning, it was us just driving and just check this out, and it felt wrong. I suppose that's the best way to describe it. It never felt like, this is an easy business to run.
Right.
Then when an uphill slog, like, everything is just harder than it should have been, and you don't kind of realize that when you're in it, in a sense. But what you do realize is when you pivot to something different, and it's suddenly the market's pulling you. You're like, this is the right place. This is where we need to be. This is where my focus and attention should be. And it's like chalk and cheese. It's completely opposite ends of the sort of emotional spectrum, I suppose. One's just like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do today? The other one's like, yeah, what are we going to do today? It's very different.
Yeah. And I think the second thing you hit on was really niching down and really solving a really hard set of problems for like a really narrow niche. So going deep and then going wide. I presume that means like really, really focusing on that niche and solving a range of problems for that niche of users.
Exactly. It's a bit of a tightrope ride, in a sense that you don't want to solve too many problems for that niche industry, in a sense, because let's say the asbestos surveying market has a feature that just doesn't apply to any of these other industries. It's not it wouldn't be in the best interest of our company to develop that, because, as you can build every single feature, and suddenly you're then pinned, or you're then stuck in that market, and you can't then offer something to somebody else. So what we've realized is a bit of a separation of concerns is in our interest, in the sense that the product should have features that can be valuable to every market, and we're very selective about what we bring into the product. Every new feature is debated. It's sometimes we spend months on a product just to bin the code, and product feature just to bin the code, and then on the sort of other side of that, you've got to think, well, how do I solve the problems for this particular industry? So we've got a bit of a separation of concerns for product and the templates. Now, the templates we can customize however an industry wants, and they just serve that industry. The product has a feature set that applies to lots of industries. So we're always very careful not to conflab the two, in a sense.
Right. So that's an interesting approach. So you're building the core products you want to be translatable to other industries, but you're using configurable templates to pin down a particular industry and solve, the hard problems, the hard things for that particular industry.
Precisely. Yeah, you've got to,
Yeah.
no matter what sector or industry you're in, you have to be cognizant of there's more out there, and we're gonna go into there at some point. So I guess in a sense, it's like how big are you thinking? If you're thinking, oh great, we're going to be the best asbestos surveying software in the market, you can do that quite easily. But
Yeah.
if you're thinking, well, we're going to be the best compliance software in the market, that's a whole different thing. And actually, that comes back in a sense to what David and I discussed at the start, which was like, what are we actually going to be here? What is the
Yeah.
company? What are we going to build? And we had this idea of like the Webflow, which is like a website building tool of compliance reporting. So you can build reporting software for any industry, and we nailed that down in the beginning, I think, quite well. And then the other conversation was like, okay, in terms of values, then where do we sit, and that sort of stuff. But yeah, that was an interesting one. But then it's just remembering that, can we, is what we're doing now going to take us further away from that or closer to it?
Yeah, but I do think I do agree with you on the niching point, though. I think like the ability to niche down, even if it seems a little bit scary to like, maybe niche, you feel like you're niching a little bit too far. But I think creating that product and creating that message which speaks to like, when you're talking to someone, they are kind of thinking like, wow, like Paul's like reading my mind here. Like he knows exactly what's going wrong in my life, and he's got this thing that's going to fix it. Like it kind of needs to get to that level, doesn't it? And I think you're doing that with your strap line, right? Making it easier for asbestos surveyors to write reports, saving them time and money so they can focus on what matters. That speaks directly to a surveyor, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and it would be very easy to change that to our software helps compliance experts create reports, and that would be.
Yeah.
But then suddenly it doesn't resonate with that person. Am I a compliance guy? I think I am. Like suddenly it's harder to. The messaging becomes harder. The other thing about that is as well, by niching down, your case studies can be on point. It can be everyone in that industry who's respected suddenly, is seeing those case studies from people that they know. So that's the other sort of side of it. I mean, it's the analogy, isn't it, of in any business, if you're a general builder in Newcastle, you're going to get less work probably than a roof specialist in Heaton, a suburb of Newcastle.
Exactly.
So it's that sort of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's probably, well, actually we've been there. I think it's easier to really niche down and grab a hold of something and then expand out from there, because like everything kind of comes from revenue, right, and profit, like, and the ability to do that first and then move off that, I think, is just easier than trying to have like quite general market and that no one really understands what you do and if they should fit.
Exactly. And the other side of that, which I haven't mentioned as well, is you'll get raving fans if you niche down. So like,
Yeah.
if my attention was split between asbestos, fire risk, Legionella, yada yada, yada, which as it's starting to become, I couldn't then necessarily have a call with an asbestos surveyor and say, oh yeah, this exact problem, I've just heard it from somebody else, I'm going to put you in touch or whatever. I can't then connect the dots as well. The network is too big. So it means that you can give like stellar service. You can solve those problems to the nth degree, and people will love you for it. And what's that worth? Well, the long tail effect of that is enormous. You wouldn't believe how many referrals we get now. How many people give us 5-star reviews? It's crazy, but it's because we've specifically solved those problems first. And it's a hard thing to maintain at scale, of course, but we've still got that core group of champions and advocates that we'll probably never lose, and they'll always be resharing our posts and liking our posts and things like this.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I think as well, like, I think the way the wheel's headed, right, I think building SaaS is becoming easier and easier. Like, I think it's becoming democratized, in the same way that WordPress democratized web design and web development back in 2009, 2010. I think it's getting easier and easier to build SaaS products, and I think we'll end up in a position where every conceivable niche has a SaaS product. I just think that's the way it's going, right? I mean, if you picked, what you would think is quite a strange niche, like, I don't know, like knitting or like a specific type of knitting, I could guarantee there'll be some community or some product or something which teaches you how to do that and is monetized in some way, right? like asbestos surveying reporting, right, is super niche. Like, how many people in the world actually do that? Yet you've got a profitable product doing it, So I just think that's the way the world's going.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's not a lot of unknown kind of problems now, and you go on Reddit and everyone's kind of searching for the next big problem. But
Yeah.
often it's quite close to home for us. We were able to narrow in on that because of David's background. We wouldn't have known that problem existed if we hadn't
Yeah.
worked for this company. So I think for any founder, like entrepreneur, like there's something you've been close to in your life, which where there's a problem and it just needs solving, and then it's a case of what's called dog fooding, isn't it, in the industry? So
Yeah.
then you become your first client and you're actually solving your own problem. So dog fooding is just using your own product to solve your problem. So that's you're right though, that it's becoming a bit of a crowded industry in a sense, but there's still lots of niches if you kind of
Loads.
determined enough to look for them.
I mean, we come across them all the time, right? I've spoken with solicitors, engineering companies, like all of these traditional industries which are still using Excel, people's time consultants to do very specific things, when actually they could productize all that knowledge into a platform and allow their customers to self-serve. Like, we see it a lot. And there's only one way that's going. Like, it's a question of like when it happens, not if.
Mm-hmm.
So I think businesses who find themselves like, like running complex things out of Excel or delivering a service where they're trading time for money, need to be thinking, okay, like, is there a product for this already that I can use? Or, should I build one? Because like that is going to happen at some point, and you need to decide whether you want to use a competitor's product or build your own. Because I think that's the way it's going.
And a lot of companies will be left behind if they don't move with the times, and it's the truth of it, isn't it? Your margins get eroded, your competitor suddenly wins a few more deals, and
Yeah,
that's the way of the dodo.
it's the way the cookie crumbles.
I like
All
it.
right. um, Data, right? So, I see a lot of stuff that you've posted on LinkedIn, Paul, around metrics, and you seem to be
Mhm.
quite metric driven, especially around fine tuning your SaaS product. So, how does that look in your head?
So yeah, you should definitely be making data driven decisions. That's for
Yeah,
sure. We monitor the obvious things. Net revenue retention is the big one in our industry. If you're
yeah.
not monitoring net revenue retention, what you're doing. So that's
So, what
how
is
much
that?
of your revenue. Oh yeah, so it's how much of your revenue you've retained this month compared to last month, essentially.
Right.
So
Yeah.
if it's above 100%, then your business is growing without the influx of new customers. If it's
Okay.
less than 100, your business is shrinking. So it gets called like a leaky bucket. If you've got
Yeah.
less than 100%, you're constantly having to find new customers to fill that, plug that hole, and fill the leaky bucket.
Yeah.
And it becomes steadily harder. If you've got over 100%, then your business is growing naturally. I suppose you get more of your clients expanding than contracting, than
Yeah.
reactivating rather than leaving, that kind of thing. So net revenue retention is absolutely the thing you should be looking at from the get-go. There's a lot of nuances to that as well. So if you're onboarding bad fit customers, then they're going to be more likely to leave. If you're not, like, let's say we onboarded I don't know, a customer in a certain niche asbestos area, and we couldn't solve some of their problems. We didn't have the features and what have you.
Yeah.
Then they're more likely to churn. So churn's just another word in SaaS for they're going to go,
Yeah.
and that's going to affect your revenue retention, because you might have spent a lot of time on that customer as well, onboarding them. The company's resources have gone into to getting them on board, but they haven't
Yeah.
stuck around. That's not a good position to be in.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure your net revenue retention is high. Another part of that is it comes down to your targeting. So if you're targeting a particular segment of the market, like small businesses are more likely to churn than large businesses. Generally, that's the crack.
Yeah.
Then you need to start moving up market, serving bigger customers. Make sure you're targeting bigger customers. We've looked at our net revenue retention by sort of segment. So we look at by industry, by company size, by number of templates. We carve it up in lots of different ways so that we know, right, if we target this specific niche, they're going to be more likely to stay with us, and they're going to be more likely to expand and grow. And that helps everyone. It's not just us. It helps them.
Yeah.
If they grow, they make more money. Everyone's happy. Um, and then you want to be saying no to some of those bad fit customers once you sort of understand the data.
Yeah.
So net revenue retention is the main one. Then MRR, monthly recurring revenue, is the other one. Now that's going to dictate how you think about hiring. Can we afford the next hire? Can we get a bigger office? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We're in a fortunate position where we don't have runway, so we're never going to run out of money. We've bootstrapped it, and now we're just at the point where we make more than we spend. That's just how it is. So we're actually in the opposite problem where we need to spend more. In a sense, we need to make sure we're doubling down on marketing. We're spending more on advertising, that kind
Yeah.
of thing. But yeah, to be honest, I think for a SaaS business, those are probably the two I would be tracking like daily.
So at what point would you bring that in terms of, like, is there a certain like monthly recurring revenue or a certain number of customers that you bring those metrics in at? And I guess second question, say like pre 20 customers, would you track different things to those things? Just because like at some point it turns from, intuitive to, oh, actually, this is something we definitely need to track, right? Because we can't speak to every customer at once.
Yeah, I think probably more of the soft side of things, I would say. So like pre 20 customers, we were more interested in like, is this fulfilling a need for this customer, and what's their feedback? Are they happy? Is this because what you'll find is, and what we found is when we've gone into different industries, is different segments of the industry have different price sensitivities. They have different feature requests. They have different, there's different products out there as well. So, if you're going into different niches, there are perhaps some very well established competitors in one market, and
Yeah.
some non-established competitors, no companies in the other markets. So it's like you're sort of getting a feel for like the market environment, and that's more important, I would say, in the beginning than actually figuring out, right, what's the retention. You're not going to have enough data to really find out those things anyway.
Yeah.
But certainly in the beginning, it's more about like, are we going to get raving fans here, or do we need to go into another industry where we will? That's
Right.
probably more important, I would say.
Okay. And in terms of getting customers, are there any key metrics you track from like a marketing point of view to understand, you're finding customers who have, the right fit?
Yeah, the one that we track, I guess, is lead velocity. So
Right.
it's one that Jason Lamkin talks about in his Impossible to Inevitable book, I think, or maybe just on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Is lead velocity is you can cut out all of the other stuff. It doesn't really matter too much how many leads you get in. So you're not charting how many likes you're getting on posts, how many shares, and all this sort of stuff. How many leads you getting? Because if you're not getting
Yeah.
leads, either your messaging isn't resonating,
Yeah.
or you're messaging to the wrong people. The market isn't big enough. Who knows? Yeah, there's lots of reasons for that. So we measure it month on month. What's our lead velocity this month compared to the last month, and then we dissect that. So if you can imagine a bar chart,
Yeah.
in that bar, where did those leads come from? LinkedIn,
Yeah.
website. So you can see if suddenly the website leads are dropping off, we need to do some work on our website. If the
Sure.
LinkedIn ones are dropping off, hey, we haven't been so active on LinkedIn this month.
Yeah.
I would say you can ignore a lot of the other metrics. That's the one you need to look at, really.
Yeah. So like, actual, people approaching you or feel as given some signal that they're interested in buying your product. Like that's the one important thing amongst all of the
Precisely.
noise. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lead we would say is someone who's approached us and maybe wants a demo, or it's not
Yeah.
someone like who's, maybe someone said, oh, maybe my friend Dave would be interested in this. That's not a lead.
Mm.
If Dave
Yeah.
comes to us and says, hey, I'm interested in the software, that's a lead.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you touched on message there as well. I think that's so important. Like, you know, it's a messaging we're putting out there actually resonating with the right people because we've made this mistake before, right? And we've put a lot of effort into messaging over the last few months, which is we're gonna start to reposition on our website. Our website is really the only place at the minute that we haven't put this message, but it's everywhere else in terms of our email marketing and our brochure. Um, we're really positioning into um, we build SaaS products for scaling businesses who want to create seven-figure revenue streams that it's never before. And last year our messaging was more around more generic stuff, right? Web development, saving time and money. Um, and we spent like 10 grand on PPC last year, which gave us no return. And
Right.
I think, um, like I attribute that to us having a poor message, which wasn't connecting with people.
Mhm.
And I think it's so easy to just to do, marketing things with a a message which doesn't really click with people, and sort of wondering like, oh, why isn't our PPC's crap? PPC doesn't work, when it's not. It's our messaging is bad, therefore PPC doesn't work. So I don't know if you found anything or learned anything like that on your journey as well.
Yeah, definitely, and it's probably part of my really ongoing journey as a marketer. And I've brought my sister into the business. She's working with us now, and it's fantastic. And one of the things that that I've learned is, you talked about saving time and money. So many businesses can say that it doesn't stand out, and you've got to say, well, so what? So what? And it's the sort of so what technique, isn't it? Okay, saves you so much time and money. Okay, so what? Well, that means I can spend less time at work. So what? I can spend more time with my family. So what? I love my family. I like spending time with my family. I don't have to work as much. So like, if you use that technique to go down to really the usually like an emotional reason why someone would use your product, then that messaging will resonate way more than just like the sort of the clear cut, oh, it saves you time and money. There's another level to that, I find, which I'm constantly having to remind myself of. I'm not brilliant at this, but I'm getting better, where I can now sort of go, that doesn't really, I'm not saying anything here. I need to get to the core of what this actually is, get into our client's head. And there's a thing in marketing where you've got to try and sort of think about, like, what would your clients say? What would they moan to their partners about in at the dinner table? What would they be sort of complaining about at the dinner table? And if you can get into that mindset, I think that you've got good messaging.
Yeah, and you've got people like Chris Voss, who Never Split the Difference. He's an ex-FBI.
I've read it. Yeah, it's good.
Great book. He talks about that in terms of the active listening and empathy. And you've got people like Daniel Priestley who talk about tactical empathy. Like leading the charge on that. And I do think it's so important. Like, what is painful for your target audience, and how can you empathize, that you understand like that deep pain that they have, and then put something forward that's going to solve that problem for them.
Precisely. And usually the answer is like, you have to have had lots of conversations. I think that's the one.
Yeah. All right. I guess, is there anything, where you look at other tech entrepreneurs who've succeeded or failed, would you see any common traits amongst those who've succeeded versus failed?
Yeah, I would say the ones that succeed are the ones that can let go of an idea, or they can throw away a bunch of work. So we've had some frustrating times recently with product development, where we've spent, and I'm not even joking, 6 months to a year on some features, only to realize actually this isn't getting us closer to where we want, or the market changed. There's new technology available. We're going to do it differently. Clients just don't exactly want this. We've then had to bin a bunch of work. So you've got to be quite clear about, like, if it's not solving our customer's problem, it's not. We're going to take ego out of the equation. We're going to take all of that hard work out of the equation. We're going to bin it. We're going to shelve it. So that's the main thing. But the same goes for ideas too. If you have, in the same way that we spent all this time building this vehicle route planning software, if you're not getting the pull from the market, and you'll know when there's a pull, when there's like a real market need for something. If you're not getting that, and you can say to yourself, honestly, I've had enough conversations. It's not me. I'm not the problem. It's the market. If you can say that, well, you need to let go. And it's the gambler's fallacy, isn't it? I've spent £1,000 in this betting shop. I'm going to spend another £10 because I've invested all this time and money, and I need to get my money back. No, reset. Just stop now. And chances are you can use a big chunk of that work in a different way. So when we pivoted, although we binned a lot of work for this vehicle planning software, we took our styles, we took our took our UI and stuff like that, all the stuff that we were able to bring over, we did. And it was a lot of unpicking of code, of course, but that was literally the best thing we could do. If we'd plugged away at that, we would have become disillusioned. We would have maybe decided, I'm going to go back and work for some other company at this point. So the team would have suffered, the direction would have suffered. No, just go, I'm listening. Market's telling me something here. I'm going to do something else. And I see people cling onto these ideas, man. And I'm just like, what are you doing? You've the market's told you what they've given you the answer here. Don't cling on to this. That's more about you than than the product and the market. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah.
Advice. Just don't be precious.
So do you advocate? Well, it sounds like there was well, it was clearly a big pivotal moment because you pivoted from one thing to something completely different, right? Like there's not much that connects vehicle route planning with asbestos surveys, like apart from the reused brands in UI and things like that, and maybe what you learned, but they are completely different things.
Yeah, I mean the only sort of parallel crossover, I guess, is that if you are a large company with a huge fleet, the type of customers we have not won yet, these are big enterprise customers. That is a feature that you'll need a vehicle route
Yeah,
plan, and that's the
yeah,
only thing that connects them. But yeah, in terms of the product and what the problem we were solving, they were completely different. So I think
yeah,
that's the thing. Yeah, don't hold on to ideas, and also be incredibly grateful for positive or negative feedback. If
yeah,
someone comes to you and says, "This isn't working because X, Y, Z," don't get sort of hot and bothered about it. Just ask more questions. Oh, can you tell me more about that? Like,
yeah,
please elaborate. I'd love to know more. Can I buy your coffee? We'll go talk about it. It's not what people
yeah,
kind of used to hear, and they could be poo poo in your product, and you're sort of like, great. What else? Like
yeah,
that's the right
yeah,
answer.
yeah. I do think that's really important. Like, I think there's almost um like a mindset thing here where it's like disconnects like yourself from um like disconnect there's an emotional tie, isn't there, between like you and what it is that you're building. And I think we see this as well. It's like, okay, sometimes we have to sever that and just like observe, like look at see it as something we're observing, not as something which is like part of us, just so that we can tinker with it and fine tune it with feedback rather than feel insulted by just genuine feedback that people are giving to just make your life easier.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, here's an example. My brother spent months and months, almost a year, building an advanced scheduling tool,
Mm,
only to sort of, well, in this case, just to realize, what, this isn't something new I'm building. Google's built this already. They've got a calendar, right? So, okay,
yeah,
we're gonna start like integrating with theirs instead. So I'm kind of like, oh god, dude, I've put all this messaging about the new advanced scheduling tool. I'm gonna have to go back on that, and we're still in development. No worries. We'll do it this other way. It sounds better. Halfway through the integrating, we're using this bit of software. If that falls down, we're gonna have all sorts of problems. And then we had some early customer meetings, and they're saying it's just not what we want. It's just not.
yeah,
This isn't what we want. We want what you guys were building originally. And we're like, oh man, we've put out all this message, and David, don't do this again. And he's like, what do you think, Paul? Should we stop this and maybe just do something else? I'm like, yeah, sure. That it's the right thing to do. I'm going to have to apologize profusely to a bunch of people, but you know what? Absolutely, the feedback is the feedback. You can't
yeah,
change the feedback. So, um, yeah, you just got to be kind of like, as you say, take yourself out of the equation. You are not your product. If people are poo poo in the product or whatever, it's not you. It's they want something different. That's
yeah,
ultimately what it comes down to.
yeah, exactly. All right. Last question from me,
Mhm.
Paul. Is there anyone that you believe just deserves a shout out just because they're doing something really cool?
Yeah, I would just say anyone in the Northeast who's fostering the local tech scene. So I've got a lot of admiration for people like Dylan McKee,
Yeah.
who does the Silicon Mingle events,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
his team, of course. There's more than just Dylan involved, and people like Paul Smith who do regular drop-ins. You can chat to Paul over a coffee. He'll talk to you about your ideas, and that's where we started out. He was kind enough to mentor us as well, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
People like Paul Lancaster, again, you're building a community of people in the startup scene, and Joe York, Ignite Accelerator CEO, who she's often got so much time for you and to talk about your ideas and things like this. So anyone like
Yeah.
that has my deep respect and admiration, and I hope that one day I can sort of be giving back to the community in the same way. Like you and I, Mark, we're the greybeards now. We've been around the industry for a while. We were once the younglings getting all the advice. Now we should be doling out the advice, and that's why I'm on this podcast, right? But I want to give back a little bit to the community who've helped to raise me up, and I think that these people who are already doing that are aspirational people.
Yeah. Awesome. I would agree with you. You know, I think all those people you mentioned there are like having a positive impact on the Northeast tech scene, like one way or the other. And I think that's what we need, right? We need more people building tech in the Northeast. We need more people getting into the tech industry out of school. And I think as a collective, those people are pushing that forward. And I agree with you as well, Paul. I think now is our time to give back in an experiential way, right? I think it's really easy. If we observe some of the mistakes we've made and some of the advice we've had from mentors over the years, sorry, it's, I think when you observe what like a startup business is doing, especially if it's started by someone in the early 20s who's never been in industry before, it's almost like you can prophesy some of the things which are going to happen just by some of the trajectory that they're on. And that'll be the same for us, right? Like if I've found someone who's done what I've done and exited the business, they're probably going to look at what I'm doing now and say, right, well, actually, this, and this are the things that you need to be thinking about now, because in 6 months they're going to be real problems. And how much does that help, right? Like it saves a lot of time and money if you've got someone who can just prophesize those things for you, so you don't make those same mistakes everyone else has.
Yeah, and put yourself back in the sort of point where we were at the start of our journey. There's probably someone in that community who said something or guided us in some way, and I'm kind of like, as I'm getting older, I'm more cognizant of like, that should be me now. I should be giving back in this way, because I wouldn't be where I am now without the help of the community. It's important, I think.
Well, whoever becomes your mentee, Paul, is going to be a very lucky person.
Very kind of you, Mark. Thank you.
All right. Paul, where's the best place for people to follow you and find out what you do?
Yeah, I'm not active on any of the social media platforms apart from LinkedIn. So get in touch on LinkedIn. I will be happy to say hello. And look forward to getting to know you. If you're in my industry or not, or you just want some advice in software, yeah, absolutely reach out to me.
Awesome. Right. Well, we'll stick those links wherever we sort of share this video too. So that'll just be in the comments of the description. For anyone who wants to keep in touch with us, join our newsletter, which is newsletter.w.co.uk. We'll pop a link in the comments for that as well, to see more great content like this. And yeah, I mean, Paul, I've really enjoyed this. I think there's so many just like nuggets of information which just like will help people. So we're just talking about that, like avoid mistakes, tracking the right things early enough, and just course correct people, to avoid making some of the mistakes traps that are easy to fall into when been building SaaS, right? So like, thanks very much for doing this and sharing that with us.
Absolutely. I hope it helps someone. Thanks a lot.
All right. Well, thanks for watching, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.